Hi, this is Lindsay, one of the co-hosts of Beauties and Headcanons. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Rachel Mullins, host of #NoFilterFriday here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my new show, #NoFilterFriday, where we talk about all of the sexual misconduct allegations swirling around Hollywood. A new show drops every Friday at 8:30 Pacific Standard Time. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of #NoFilterFriday. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hello and welcome to your Soccer Passport here on Public House Media. My name is Brice Burge.
And I'm Ivan Sanchez Carrasco. Brice, today we're going to talk about the Champions League games that happen, the ones that are going to happen. Then we're going to go to Mexico and talk about two rivalry matches. And hey, the Oscars are this weekend, so we're going to pick our top 3 favorite soccer movies to end the week.
That'll be a fun time here on your Soccer Passport, which is sponsored by Squadcast. As podcasters that deal with analysts and guests from around the world, being able to record remotely is key. Current industry standards rely heavily on internet connection, but Squadcast changes that with a simple browser-based tool that requires no additional software to install. The audio is recorded locally as high-quality WAV files, then uploaded to the host computer, allowing some really good audio quality. To get started with your remote podcasting recording experience, go to squadcast.fm for your 14-day free trial. So let's go ahead and go to the Champions League. The first leg of the round of 16 is going on right now. Let's start off with a couple of games that have already played. I'm looking right now as I pull up the full listing here. Roma beat Porto 2-1. PSG upset a Man United team that received a red card 2-0. Tottenham also winning big with their matchup against Dortmund 3-0. And then Real Madrid with a 2-1 victory over Ajax. Out of those 4 games, which ones kind of stood out to you?
I was really impressed with PSG going to United and getting the win, especially without Neymar and without Carvalho. I think PSG gets a lot of flack in the world stage because of their dominance in France and how they haven't been able to dominate Europe in the same manner. And they were playing a very hot United team, a team who was on a streak, and they went in and really just outclassed them completely away. And that 2-0 away is huge for them entering the second leg. And I was just impressed about their composure, about the way they were kind of able to dissect and pick apart United in the second half. And Di Maria was spectacular for them, and Mbappe continues to show why he's labeled as the next big thing in soccer. So I was just really impressed by that. Spurs, I thought at home beating Dortmund 3-0 in the second half too. It was 0-0 at halftime. The way they they surprised Dortmund too, because Dortmund's leading the German league, and the way they were able to kind of shock and attack Dortmund and pick them apart through crosses and set pieces and kind of bully their way to a 3-0 win was really nice. I thought the only game of the 4 that kind of stood pat and wasn't much surprise was Roma holding court 2-1 at Porto. How about you?
Well, I mean, I thought it was interesting with PSG, just kind of going back to that one a little bit. I mean, with what they were able to do against Man U is still a team that has defeated a lot of the teams that they should be defeating in the Premier League right now, but they really haven't seen anything that was really going to throw them for a loop. And the first time that they do that, they lose 2-0. Pogba got really just out of control there near the end. He received a red card. He's got he eventually will be kind of brought back down to earth, but it puts them in a bad spot now heading abound. And so now I don't really know about what to expect out of Man U, and just kind of this situation where now Manchester's in a spot where, they're not they're not necessarily in a bad thing, but this is their first chance of adversity, I think, really since Gunner's taken over, since they've had a chance to be on the positive things after their whole drama that was very well known throughout the world kind of started to, end. So now that they've got this 2-0 loss and they're facing the second leg coming up, it is going to be an interesting opportunity to see how Man U responds. I thought that the Tottenham game was interesting too, just because I thought of how efficient they were at defeating Dortmund. It really wasn't much of a game in my mind in terms of who showed dominance from beginning to end. I thought that was interesting, but I think it was more one of the more remarkable moments of that opening leg was really Real Madrid kind of coming back a little bit when Ziyech tied the game in the 75th minute for Ajax there. It created an opportunity where Ajax could have really kind of held their own through that opening leg until Asensio came in the 87th minute and got that game winner later on. Even total shots were in favor of Ajax, even though shots on target were pretty much about the same. All the other stats throughout the game, they were pretty similar for these two teams. And so to see Real Madrid kind of take that championship mindset and step up a little bit and get that win, I thought was a big move for them heading into the second leg.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought Ajax played really, really well and were probably the better team for the most part, but that's the thing when you play a team like Real Madrid, that they showed why they're the 3-time champions. Even when they're not playing their best, they're going to take some shots and they're going to take some punches, but they're going to be ready to take their shot. And they kind of stole one, I guess, but in a way, this is what you do when you're the champions. Even when you're not playing your best, you find a way to win. And that's kind of why there's, until the Dragon's dead, they're going to still being the champions. They're still going to be as dangerous as anybody in Europe, even though domestically they might not be at the level they should. So a real champions performance by Real Madrid in that second leg, or in that first leg away from home.
Now these teams will flip their locations when heading to the second leg coming up. Those games will be on March 5th and March 6th. So there's a little bit of time left before the second leg, but the rest of the round of 16 has yet to be played. Lyon and Barcelona will face off at 3 p.m. tomorrow. Also at 3 p.m. tomorrow, or actually it will be the day of broadcast, will be Liverpool and Bayern Munich. On Wednesday, Atletico Madrid and Juventus will face off, and Schalke and Man City will face off on Wednesday as well. All those games will be played at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Times. Please adjust accordingly depending on where you're listening from. Let's focus on these games a little bit here because I see some that could be blowouts. I see some that could be close. Let's ask some more analytical questions here. With which game out of these four do you think will be the closest matchup?
I think the closest one, score-wise, is going to be Atletico against Juve, just because Atletico's style won't allow, especially at home, they're not going to allow Juve to kind of break out and have an ultra-attacking style. And Juve has a natural tendency as well to play a little defensive away from home to begin with. So I think that one's going to be the most contested and closest one out of the four. I think Liverpool and Munich will be the most entertaining one out of all of them. And it could be very even, but I think the style that both these teams play, you could easily see a high-scoring game that could get out of hand just because they both Liverpool's very open and loves free-flowing soccer, and Munich also has no problem matching that as well. So that one, I think, could be the most competitive and most entertaining in that regard, but I also think you could have a wonky scoreline possibly coming out of that one too, out of those, because of that too. What do you think?
Liverpool and Bayern was probably my most close one too, just because even though that things may get out of hand late, when you're looking at the players on the pitch that are going to be making some different moves there, I really think that these two teams play off each other, and you could get a 4-4 draw, honestly, out of a game like that. And I like higher scoring games. I come more for the hockey world than the soccer world. So, seeing a 4-4 game isn't anything that I blink at usually, but in soccer it's a little bit different. And so I think it's going to be entertaining that way, just because these teams are going to go after each other in a more fan-friendly matchup than, let's say, what you kind of presented with Atletico and Juventus. I think that game is going to be fairly boring for fans to watch. It's going to be more defensively centric, and there's not going to be a lot of opportunities, even though that Madrid and Juventus could both possibly create some really good opportunities. It's going to be whoever makes the least amount of mistakes on their opponent's chances that wins that game ultimately. And with the quality of both those squads, I'm not really sure that there will be any, and you could see a scoreless draw. Let's flip to the blowout potential. What one of these games could you see not going well and kind of ending up in a 3-0, 2-0 type scenario like we did on the other side of the round of 16?
I think it's City against Schalke. I just part of it because Lyon impressed me with their group stage effort against City. They got a couple of strong results against them, so that shows that they won't be fearful of Barcelona, even though Barcelona definitely has the quality and the potential to kind of blow Lyon out. I just think City has more of an opportunity to do it against Shakhtar, who are struggling in the Bundesliga. City kind of getting a little momentum back after kind of a rough winter break. And so look for City to kind of just put their stamp on this game early with their passing and their movement. And I think that one's the one that has the most potential to get blown out of the two, partially for City and the way they're building, and partially for Lyon and the way they've kind of played City in the group stage earlier in the season, that they can show that they have fight in them and they can sneak a result or at least keep it interesting for the second leg.
Yeah, Schalke hasn't won against a top-tier opponent since almost a month ago when they won 2-1 versus Wolfsburg. They've really kind of struggled in a lot of ways, in my opinion, and they only have a 9% win probability according to Yahoo Sports. So, it's interesting in that regard to see exactly what Schalke's been able to try to bring to the table, and I just don't know if they will. I think the only reason why this doesn't turn into a bloodbath is the kind of discussion that you brought up about Man City. They are still kind of figuring everything out in their own way, but they just had a very impressive FA Cup victory over Newport County 4-1. They beat Chelsea, too, in their last Premier League matchup. We talked about that on the show last week, a 6-0 drubbing of Chelsea. This is just a Man City team that has everything firing on all cylinders, with the exception of maybe that Newcastle game last month. But this is a two teams that are heading in opposite directions this season, and if you're Man City, you're just focused on getting out of there with not losing anybody to injury. It's not going to be anything that's going to be overly dangerous per se for either side of the squad. So it's an interesting matchup there as we head into the Champions League games on Your Soccer Passport. Want to do a quick update too. You are more than welcome to follow us all on Twitter and Facebook. Look up Your Soccer Passport or Your Soccer Pass on Twitter. We're also available on Instagram. Our show is sponsored by the TeePublic merchandise shop through the Public House Media. Best way to support your favorite shows is with t-shirts, mugs, wall art, and more. All available in the TeePublic shop. Visit teepublic.com/pubhousemedia. That's teepublic.com. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we return, we will have our Soccer Oscars nominations, as well as some rivalry talk down in Mexico. You're listening to Your Soccer Passport, sponsored by Squadcast.fm, here on Public House Media.
This is John Lauder, host of The Cheap Seats here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, The Cheap Seats, where we talk about sports from the fans' perspective. A new show comes out every Monday. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of The Cheap Seats. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Welcome back to Your Soccer Passport. I'm Brice Burge, Ivan Sanchez Carrasco 2. Follow us on Twitter at Ivan Sanchez C90 and at that Brice Burge, Brice with an I. Lots of additional commentary there, so you can follow us and learn more information whenever you need your soccer passport fix. All right, we got a couple of major rivalries from below the border. We're talking about the Clásico Capitalino as well as the Clásico Tapatio between a couple of teams in Liga MX. Which one do you want to talk about first, Ivan?
We'll do the Clásico Capitalino first between Pumas and América.
Okay. All right, Pumas won 1-0 on that one. An Espanola goal at 48 minutes, right after the start of the second half, was your difference maker. Shots on target, 4-3 in favor of Pumas. Shots total in favor of Pumas as well, 14-11. Possession, 56-44, also in favor of the winning side. What did you get out of this matchup in this one? Because this one was fairly even.
Yeah, this was a great victory for Pumas. I'm not going to say that they got revenge for their 6-2 drubbing in the semifinals last year against América, or last season, but it was a good result. Kind of put them back in the race for the Liga MX title, and got a very important rivalry win. These local derbies are huge in Mexico, and this one's probably the second biggest rivalry in Mexico. And just because you have the higher echelons América against the university team in Pumas. So for them to get a 1-0 win, put them back a little bit into the playoff hunt, all big for Pumas and for América. Plenty of time left to play for them, but still haven't hit that stride that they hit last year as they became champions.
Yeah, we're only 7 games really into the Liga MX season, so there's a lot to talk about. There's still a lot just in general that's left to happen in that one. And I know that we're not necessarily talking about that scenario, but it is a big one too, because that's the thing, is that season never really ends down there. And so it is a constant reminder that there's always something to play for, whether it's a local derby or something else, especially because when you think about it, those two teams now both have 9 points. Yeah, so they're sitting right next to each other in the table. So this one had a lot of opportunities for Pumas to kind of, step up a little bit. I think they did a good job, especially when they were kind of, I don't want to say struggling, but they were kind of just hanging around doing nothing. They had a couple of bad losses and then just kind of grinded out a couple other ones. So, I think this was an important win for Pumas.
Yeah, I agree. I thought, I wouldn't say they were struggling, but when they kind of had the backs against the wall, this is a good way to kind of push back and show they can compete with the more talented teams in the Liga MX. And like you said, the seasons, just because they're shorter, they never really end at the same time. In a way, they never begin, because as soon as you lose momentum, another team can gain momentum, and all of a sudden you're in the playoffs and anything can happen. But yeah, this is what makes the rivalry games great. In the middle of the season, you kind of get this little adrenaline shot to kind of put you back into to kind of set everything back in motion, and it could either really pick you up or put you down.
Let's swap over to the other big rivalry matchup. That one was not nearly as entertaining, but it required, there was something entertaining about it. Alexis Vega had a hat trick, scoring in the 8th, 23rd, and 61st minute for Guadalajara as they beat Atlas 3-0. This was a major matchup just because of that regional rivalry that I thought really kind of showed that Guadalajara is a competitive team again, especially with the way that their substitutes kind of came on and handled things properly for this team, especially with putting shots on target when Atlas was kind of playing a little bit overly defensive after a while.
Yeah, this one hurts me deep because I'm an Atlas fan. So this is the part where my family's from in Mexico, is Guadalajara. And so for people who don't know, this is actually Mexico's oldest rivalry. I believe it's 113 years old when around May, it'll be their 113th year anniversary of them facing each other. And yeah, just classic big brother just beating the little brother up. Atlas off to a surprisingly good start, and this was kind of a matchup for them to be able to show that they are a contender. They are able to at least hang around those playoff spots. And it's disheartening that they got handled the way they did 3-0, because these are kind of be the battles that they need to win to really push for a playoff spot. So yeah, not a good week for me down in Mexico with my cousins and uncles and family.
Well, with the loss, that puts Atlas in ninth place. They're over 3 points now behind Guadalajara, who's since in fourth. Monterrey, just for people that are interested, Monterrey is on top of the division with a 5-win, 2-draw season so far. They are the only team left undefeated in Liga MX. Tigres is the closest to them with 16 points. They're 5-1-1. Leon is 4-2-1, tied with Guadalajara for that third spot. All right, we wanted to talk about a little something fun here as we wrap up this week's show, and I got to make sure that we stay on topic or we'll go over time. So we talked a little bit about movies with the Oscars, and Ivan, this was your idea, so I'm going to let you present it.
Oh yeah, so we're gonna pick our favorite soccer-related movies since the Oscars are this weekend, and unlike the Academy, our criteria is pretty much what soccer movies you like the most. So it's pretty much open for debate for both of us. Brice, any honorable mentions you have?
No. I mean, maybe I gotta remember it. You go first, just so that way I get the right name of it, because I saw it once and then I can't remember what the proper title is. So by the time that I look it up, it will be ready to go.
All right. Some honorable mentions for me are Mean Machine, which is essentially The Longest Yard, but in England and is with soccer. So it's got Vinnie Jones, it's got Jason Statham. Awesome movie. If you like The Longest Yard, you're going to love this one. Other ones, The Big Green and Kicking and Screaming, classic youth soccer movies. How are we not going to love those? But now for my top 3 favorite movies, Mean Street Hooligans. It's about hooliganism. It's got Elijah Wood, and it's about West Ham hooliganism, more or less. It's not, and it's a great movie. That's my number 3. My number 2 is Goal 2, Living the Dream, which is the sequel to what will be number 1, Goal 1. And Goal 2 is awesome because you got Santiago Munez killing it, making the move to Real Madrid, helping them try to win the Champions League while his life falls apart. And then number 1, Goal 1, The Dream Begins. Santiago Munez, kid from Los Angeles, flies over to Newcastle, tries out, and makes the team. I mean, the things dreams are made of, the things we can only hope for. Those are my top 3 favorite movies, with some honorable mentions with Kicking and Screaming, Mean Machine, and the Big Green.
Okay, all right. Well, we got a problem because one of your honorable mentions is one of my favorite movies, and that's going to go with Mean Machine. I really like what they were able to do with that. You got plenty of actual athletes. When you look at Vinnie Jones and what he did on the pitch, when you look at Jason Statham and his diving career, like, these were athletes that made the jump. It was very similar in that way to the Adam Sandler remake of The Longest Yard too. So when you had wrestlers and different people come out and actually be a part of that filming experience to create kind of that more in-depth, believable gameplay scenario, I thought it was a lot of fun. I'm gonna go. I have to take that off now, and I have to take my other ones off. So I'm gonna struggle a little bit here. But there's a really old film, and it's a British mystery film from 1939 that I think it's got to be brought up here, and it's called The Arsenal Stadium Mystery, and it's a murder mystery that's actually set at Arsenal Stadium in Highbury. And so it was a matchup between Arsenal and then a fictitious amateur side. When one of the amateurs dropped dead, they find out he's been poisoned, and you can't figure out if it's somebody from the other team or if it's like a lover's quarrel gone wrong. And it's a nice murder mystery at the time before you understood some of the tropes. And I like the importance of what this movie did, because in my opinion, I'm pretty sure this outdated the Strangers on a Train Wimbledon scene. I believe this was first. So this was really one of the very first movies that had sport of any kind be a central plot point in a mystery or a thriller of some kind. And so I thought that was very interesting in that regard. And so it's one of the more less known soccer films of all times, but I think it's an important one for understanding about how soccer is in film. Second, I'm probably gonna go because you took all the fun ones, man. Like I'm gonna go with two documentaries too. So
we can agree.
Yeah,
we
well,
can agree on
I
these
agree.
things.
I watched Big Green when we brought this up, and Big Green did not age as well as I thought it was going to, which is pretty much everything that Steve Guttenberg has ever been in. It has not aged well, whether it's been that or his character on Veronica Mars or it's been Three Men and a Baby. I mean, just if Steve Guttenberg's in it, it has not aged well. So like, there's a lot. Big Green is not like Space Jam where it has aged well. Kicking and Screaming, I thought had its points. There were things that were good about it. There were not. I thought Bend It Like Beckham was a little bit better in terms of some of those like preteen movies, but like
good call.
It's just it depends on which one it is, and when it comes down to the actual aspects of it, I'm not that big necessarily on documentaries, but I've been a big fan of the soccer ones, and so I'm going to go with my number 2 as The Opposition, which is dealing with the 1973 outcomes of World Cup qualifiers between the Soviet Union and Chile. And Chile was dealing with a lot of stuff right then at that time with different things with possible communist ties or the way that economic style was kind of coming into that country. It created a very odd opportunity to see how in South American politics, especially political here, what potential, if any, alleged interactions that the United States may have had at that time. But it was interesting to see how that country kind of circled back and was allowing sport to really kind of help get that country through things. And that pairs up well with another documentary about, local communistic leaning groups going up against the Soviet Union, because if you look up the other dream team dealing with Lithuania's basketball team, I think is another amazing documentary along the same vein. But my number 1 that I'm probably going to bring up is that I liked the artistic aspects of it so much better was The Two Escobars. And that was dealing with Pablo and Andres Escobar, and it dealt with just the influence, the influence of drug money and, Escobar's death and all these other aspects. And I thought it was an amazing, amazing movie by the Zimbalists. And it was just, to me, it's my favorite documentary of all time. And so to talk about these opportunities in soccer films, Two Escobars have got to be up there at the top.
Oh yeah, really good documentaries. Quickly, because we're on documentaries. Shout out to, that was a 30 for 30 documentary, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, they did. I think 30 for 30 did a documentary as well about the Liverpool stadium, about the Liverpool fans that all passed away in the stadium collapse. That's really heartbreaking and really good. And then also, there's a documentary about Zinedine Zidane in which they follow him for a whole match, and it's literally just cameras following him for a whole match with music playing in the background. And talk about artistic beauty. That one is incredible because it kind of matches Zidane's balleristic style of play that fits really well. But yeah, it's hard to beat soccer documentaries. The reality is always better than anything Hollywood can come up with.
Well, I think that is a perfect way to end it on this show. We've got 40 seconds. What's your shout out?
Rafa Marquez. It was his birthday this last week. Mexican legend. Turned 40 years old. Thank you, Rafa, for bringing me so much joy and love over these last couple of years, not even a couple of years, since I was pretty much 7 years old. So, Rafa, still love you. You're a legend. Hope you had a great birthday. I know he's a big fan of the show.
Oh, yeah. He's listening every week. It reminds me that you can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, Spreaker, and wherever else your podcasts can be found. I'm Brice Birch for Ivan Sanchez Carrasco. You've been listening to Your Soccer Passport on Public House Media, sponsored by Squadcast.fm.